Welcome back to Wealth Mavericks, the podcast where we help doctors unlock the secrets to building generational wealth. And today, we're talking with Dr. Subrat Khanal about what it really takes to live a 10 out of 10 life and how daily habits and intentional choices shape the future you're building.
The core values have to remain the same, like be grounded, be loving, be giving, empathetic. Financial freedom is defined for us as the ability to have our time back. Time is finite. Money is come and go.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Erin, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Dr. Subrat Khanal. He is a board-certified pulmonary and critical care physician in upstate New York. Subrat, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Erin. Lovely to talk to you.
You too. I was delighted when you told me you would be on the podcast because I so enjoy our conversations, and I know our listeners will get so much value from hearing from you. You absolutely embody so much of what we talk about around here, which is living life on purpose and being very intentional about thriving, not just in your work, but in all areas of life. And right from the start, I saw that you had this hunger for knowledge and growth in your work, in your financial life, in your health, all of it. So I'm excited to hear from you about what drives that and how you fit it all into your busy life. But before we do that, I would love to just learn a little bit more about you. So tell us what first inspired you to go into medicine.
Okay, so that was a long time ago. It feels like a different lifetime. But growing up, there was no like inner circle person in medicine in my family. There was a 3 or 4 circle later connection. And my parents and my near relatives always wanted someone to be in medicine. So that was the early impetus. But once I got into the field of science, specifically biology, not like I didn't like physics and chemistry, but all of it, sciences in general, they just attracted me right away because they're answering much of life's tough questions, right? Like, why is the sky blue? Why is 2 + 2 4 and not 5? Just the truth and the search for answers and curiosity, I guess. And the way that the human body works, it's a fantastic machine that is just so well oiled. And the various pathologies that can come up, that was curiosity inducing to me as a little kid. So I had to figure out the steps to get there and to be able to manipulate treatments, interventions to make life better, right? It wasn't like, oh, I'm altruistic, so I'm going to alleviate suffering all that much, just to be honest, but it was more the curiosity and what I could learn and do to make life better as a bonus, That's what drew me to medicine and still does. I still get fascinated by all the things that everyday science is unleashing and uncovering every day.
Yeah. And how did you decide on your particular area or specialty?
So when we went through med school and then into residency, before fellowship, this was a decision that was consciously made because I didn't want to be pigeonholed into a specific subspecialty, although every specialty has its value, and I deeply respect every different specialty. But the ICU specifically gave me an ability to be in touch with all the organ systems and to know enough to, figure out a story of why this patient has become like the person in front of me who is suffering, what was their lead up to, and what can I do to get them on the treadmill down to baseline. And that keeps you up to date with most of what medicine has to offer. And I felt that would be the most, in par with that, what I had beliefs for.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what do you love most about your job?
So I do my job in like 2 splits. One is more of the outpatient continuity of care world, where I see patients with chronic or acute lung disease. So think lung cancer, pulmonary fibrosis, COPD, asthma, bronchiectasis, cystic fibrosis, pulmonary hypertension. So there's a tremendous prevalence in the community, and a lot of it comes from people smoking, a lot of it from the atmosphere of what we're exposed to, a lot of it genetics, but people are suffering, and getting to know that, talk to them, and bring my expertise to alleviate a little bit of suffering. That's one part of it. And then the other part is the ICU, where it's just, every day is like life and death. So being able to reverse whatever can be reversed, and if not, give people dignity and pain-free in their passing, and help family accept and accommodate, the bigger realities of life. So I love both facets, which is why whenever my boss asks me, do you want to do more inpatient, outpatient? I'm like, I want to do 50-50, because it's the best of both worlds.
That's awesome. So what would you say is one of the hardest parts?
Hardest parts is when we're seeing what we would call quote unquote unfair, like a young person going through miscarriage and bleeding out to death, and we're just trying our best but not able to salvage her life, or somebody with early onset cancer, or somebody who's done everything right in their life, not smoked, not drank, not this, not that, but still ends up getting a rare genetic disease, or ALS, or things that you just can't do much, and the only thing you're able to do is to help ease the suffering, give them a relatively dignified and a pain-free passing. And that connection with the family, although fleeting, is very meaningful.
Wow. And your wife she's a physician as well, and she's in the same space, right?
Yep. We're a carbon copy of each other in the professional way of speaking. And it was very organic. We never planned this. Both of us, after med school, worked in an ICU for a couple of years to get some experience, and also to save up for our USMLE exams, which is the licensing exam to practice residency and fellowship in the States. So during that 2 years, we saw the level of acute illness, and both of us kind of ignited our interests, and now we're in it for life.
Wow. So do you bring a lot of that home and talk about it a lot at home, or are you able to leave it there and then be present with the kids and family when you come home?
It's probably woven into the fabric now.
Yeah.
When our daughter was 2, we used to be looking at x-rays at home, what do you think about this? And we just bounce ideas off each other, and it's a great, we're blessed to be able to do that. And our daughter would be passively learning, and she's like, is that bugs in the lung? Looking at a chest x-ray, I'm like, yeah, that's a pneumonia. Yep, you're saying it right. So we don't look at it as interfering. We just want to look at it as we're a part of it. It's a part of us. We can't I'm obviously getting the ICU, MRSA, C. diff, and COVID, when it was such a big threat in the initial parts, sanitizing ourselves, and the big worry being we're not hopefully bringing a life-threatening thing to our residents. That was probably the bigger challenge. But the cerebral part of things, the talking, the learning, that's a never-ending thing at home. It's probably as common as Wheels on the Bus or Old MacDonald.
Yeah. That's neat for your kids. So you guys have intentionally put some boundaries in place, I think, around your work so that you can maintain this work-life balance, which I think is a challenge for a lot of the doctors we talk to, and just throughout, the burnout and stress and sacrificing your marriage or your health. That's just very common. So what have you and your wife put in place to sort of protect yourselves from that?
Our work schedule is designed intentionally with that. So a hospitalist or an ICU physician alone works on a one-on, one-off kind of schedule, and that's because that one-on is so grueling. You're really turned on that week with busy days and call nights and all that, and ignoring your own health and sleep, and no word of relaxation at all.
Yeah.
healthy eating is probably one thing we strive the most during that time, but we end up like binge eating or garbage eating. So we had to be mindful about that and make choices. So that one off is really important to recuperate. So we try not to go into work or try not to like log into work other than like, true emergencies. But we do make sure we sign out the true emergencies to our oncoming colleagues for those off weeks so that we can recharge our batteries. And the other 2 weeks where it's pulmonary, it's more of a 9 to 5 with the weekend off kind of situation. So the weekend themselves are recuperating, and the 9 to 5 leave us from 5 to 9 to regenerate as well. So we don't want to work too hard in these off blocks. We're not chasing money. We're not like, chasing some status. So we need to give time to family. We need to give time to ourselves for wellness during that time.
That's wonderful. So you talk about how your kids get to watch you and hear you and just absorb so much of this. Maybe they'll be doctors one day.
It's up to them. We're not going to force anything on them, but it's really up to them. We only say, whatever you choose, keep your options open right now, but whatever you choose, just be the best and give your best in that.
Yeah. So that's one big value that you're looking to instill in them. What would you say are some of the other values that you really want to instill in them as they grow up?
Just, treat someone else like you would want them to treat you. Be fair, be kind, give, right? Because a lot of people are not in a position to give, and that's sad. But like, you guys have grown up with 2 physicians as your parents, so you have that umbrella insurance of having the ability to purchase something if you need it. You don't have to think of the base cost and be like converting that into other currencies. Like we grew up with rupees in our pockets, and coming here was dollars. And in the initial days we had struggles that we had to deal with, like including a hotel room would be XYZ dollars, so we'd rather sit in a train station overnight to catch the train tomorrow morning. They will not have to go through that. So we try to teach them to be giving as much as they can, and to recognize that there is suffering and a lot more unfortunate conditions not comparable to theirs. So they have to be a little empathetic.
That's wonderful. So they're growing up in a very different world, different culture than you guys grew up in. But beyond those struggles, like what would you say are the biggest differences in how you grew up and how they're growing up?
That's a broader first world problem versus third world problem kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Where, we grew up with the basics of life. Electricity was a big deal. Water was a big deal. They're growing up with, the possible influences that lead into life. Like we're not there yet with conversations with them. One is 5 and one is 1.5, but like, the availabilities of too easy a life here, things like drugs and alcohol, those are the worries that we'll have with them, and the Western culture in general that, has availability that you can do whatever you want. But we grew up completely different, under strict guidelines from our parents, like meal to meal, kind of, a very different place of the earth in general. But like, we hope to get the challenges as they come and approach them with our worldview of growing up in those times, in that era. One of my dreams as a kid was, I'll be big one day and buy a phone, like, and then like everybody has a phone, but like, context changes so quickly. So I don't know how the future is going to be for them. Like AI is a big thing, right? It's AI and crypto and this and that we don't even understand, and they will probably teach us, but the core values have to remain the same. Like, be grounded, be, loving, be giving, empathetic.
Absolutely. So you said the worry of life being too easy. And I think that is something we see here a lot. And that ties into the health conversation a lot, that we have just become so comfortable here that it is wreaking havoc on our health. And I know you and I have especially bonded over the health conversation, the longevity conversation, and just this pursuit of knowledge of like, what more can we do to optimize our health and live a very long and healthy life. So what first got you super interested in that?
As you age, right, you recognize certain things, like the same couple of glasses of wine that you were okay with previously gives you a hangover now. Your midsection tries to grow out a little, and your clothes tend to not fit, and then that realization that I'm getting older. So you want to preserve your health as much as you can, especially seeing what I see in all the disease, diabetes, osteoarthritis, coronary disease, lung disease, all of that I see on everyday life. You wouldn't want to go through that for yourself if you can help it, and basic habit changes that you can implement to avoid that path. So I immersed myself 4 years ago, probably during COVID times, really, when we had, such a health scare, that what can we do to be a little more fit, a little more immune to whatever pandemic may come, or whatever, general health, metabolic issues may come. Then I got specifically into, learning about resistance training and diet and protein intake and fiber intake and all of that. And it's kind of evolved to the point where now I feel like I'm on a peak level of fitness, but this is for general everyday life, but I want to do better. Every day I want to do better. So I'm looking more into calisthenics and doing more things that are, control and mastery over your joints and flexibility and strength and all of that. So it's been an evolving factor, and we both are. Now we're focusing on how to eat proper and not give in to the temptation, although the occasional dark chocolate is indulgence, obviously, but trying to keep that, almost 80-20 to 80 discipline and 20 to a little bit of a let your hair down kind of situation.
You only live once. Yeah. What's life without dark chocolate? But yes. So you have a lot of the valid excuses that a lot of people have. You have a busy job, you have little kids at home, you're not always sleeping as much as you should, and yet you don't let that stand in your way. And I think it's so interesting that so many of us, like, we know what could happen if we don't take care of ourselves, but we don't see it firsthand every day the way you do. So do you think a lot of your colleagues feel the same way, or do you see a sacrificing of health because of work in your colleagues?
Everybody tries to be mindful that I see, other than like a few exceptions, and those are like any other standard deviation +2 kind of situations. They're like, I don't care, and they gorge on donuts, and I don't judge them. Everybody's an adult; they can make their own decisions, right?
Yeah,
it's fine. But the rest of the people that I see, are pretty much health conscious. Everybody's trying to take the stairs instead of the elevators. Everybody's trying to eat that salad portion, including their sandwich. There's people who are mindful, and that's the first step. You have to be mindful, right? You can't be like absent-minded and finding out that you've cumulatively damaged yourself over the number of years until that eye-opener. So healthcare in general, I would say, is one of the more fitter professions. People with like IT jobs, banking jobs, a lot of managerial jobs, like the educated general population tries, but they're probably desk life, these make it tougher, and you have to make that extra ounce of effort. And when there's an extra ounce of effort, people kind of tend to, like, over time, right? Nothing intentional. That I will not be healthy is not an intentional decision. It's over time they kind of slip away. So because of the path of least resistance. So it has to be a mindful effort to bring yourself back into that kind of, steady state that your body will prosper for in the long run, where in the short run you're kind of, delaying gratification of sorts.
Yeah. So for you, what are the daily, weekly habits that are most impactful for you to keep your health on track?
When I was a fellow in pulmonary critical care at SUNY Upstate, there used to be like donuts all the time in the break room, right? Some families thanking us with donuts. Some staff as a birthday, there's donuts. Like I say donuts, but it could be anything.
Yeah.
So walking through in the morning prior to rounds or during rounds, and like you just walk through that, and how can you resist? You bite a couple. Then the conscious decision was made that I will intermittent fast. So I started it like 5 years ago, and I still do it to this day. I don't eat before 12 or 1, and I don't need to eat now that craving has completely disappeared. It's how we tune our body to do, it kind of adapts to. So it's just a cup or two of black coffee in the morning with plenty of water, so I stay hydrated. After that, I try to eat a healthy meal, because after you've fasted, you don't want to eat a donut.
Right.
So now it's more of a protein and greens based lunch, and then I can have a dessert. Like that's the reward. And then the workout part is when I'm working in a work week. Try to do it like in the morning or sometimes during lunch break. Like in my clinic weeks, I go to the nearby YMCA to lift some weights in the afternoon 3 times a week, and that's all you need. 3 to 5 times a week of 30 to 45 minutes of resistance training is great for long-term heart health, metabolic health, joint health, lung health. There's many benefits of resistance training, and resistance training can have multiple adaptations: strength, hypertrophy, endurance. There's so many. Like, it's a very detailed subject. And then you pair it with, if you're intentional about your diet, are you trying to lose weight? Do you want a 300 to 500 kilocalorie deficit per day? What are you splitting that with? Is it mostly protein, healthy fats and fibers, or is it just McDonald's and KFC? So those kind of mindful decisions I take on an everyday basis. And once you do it intentionally for at least 2-3 months, it just becomes habit. And then habit is, like James Clear in Atomic Habits is, you habit stack, and one habit adds on to the other habit, and it becomes a chain. And that overall chain tends to be a process, and your process is what I focus on, and not the results. Like I don't want to focus on being a bodybuilder or whatever, but I want to have that process that'll get me into, it's a side effect almost, that you're bound to have good health at some point in time, and it continues on a maintenance dose after that.
Absolutely. It's the consistent steps day after day that add up to the health that you want. So I know you really like to educate yourself and listen to podcasts, and like, who are some of your favorite podcasts or thought leaders to listen to when it comes to this?
Andrew Huberman is a podcast I listen to all the time. He's so good in terms of, like, he's touching on a lot of health topics, and the current one I was listening to was sleep. Sleep is super important too for recharging the batteries. And then a couple of others, like there's a Diary of a CEO right now with Stephen Bartlett. He brings in a variety of guests, and that gets you thinking on different aspects, not just health, but finance, just political and this and that, everything. It's very thought provoking. There's a couple of news podcasts, British podcasts, a couple of them that I listen to. Mostly these are on commutes or when I'm doing chores, and I don't need to pay attention to the dishes or the laundry. I just need to do them and have something in my ears to just be engaged in.
Make the most of that time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we talk about wealth a lot. Obviously, we're wealth mavericks, and health is certainly the biggest wealth. Like, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. But beyond that, you've established good health. Now you're working toward true wealth in your life. So this is different to everyone. Some people, like you said, we're not out there chasing money. Some people are, which, like you said, no judgment. Everyone has their own drive and their own goals. But for you and your wife, what does that mean? What does having wealth mean, and how has it maybe changed as you've gotten older?
Yeah, so in the beginning, there was a paucity of money, and that put a higher value on having money, right? So when you don't have something, you think the world of it, and you're like, I hope I have more. Be it to buy a packet of chips or candy as a kid, or after that to have your own vehicle, or after that your own house. But once you start getting these milestones, then you start to appreciate time as the more valuable entity. Like, time is finite, money is come and go, right? You're not gaining back the time you're losing.
Yeah.
So time you're spending on your wellness, time you're spending on your kids, time you're spending when you can be helping someone else, that's the more valuable part of life now. So to get back your time, what does that mean? You still need your finances to make sense. You still need to pay your bills. You still need to sponsor your travels that you have planned to show your kids the value of a different part of the world, you know? So financial freedom is defined for us as the ability to have our time back. And for that, we recognize that W-2 incomes will not forever be the answer. It is the answer right now when you don't have enough to invest into a passive source that you can live off that passive source. So that W-2 is the fund that you use to pipeline your eventual passive income dreams and aspirations. So that is our goal, to have enough passivity that you can use your time now to do what you find value in. So eventual goal, we have enough passive flow that we can choose to work our hours, and that's geared towards more patient care instead of any incentive that they might have, like going to a community and doing a free clinic for like a week, you know, like having a booth at the New York State Fair and just giving people health advice or looking over their specifics for those who can't afford, or like Medicine Sans Frontier, going to different countries. Like I grew up in Nepal where, you know, like people had to deposit money to even get treatment, right? That's a place where no insurance concept exists when I practiced. 8 years down the line, it may have started some, it may not, I don't know. I don't practice there right now, so I can't have specifics, but I know there's poverty. So going to poverty-stricken places and be able to afford our time and help to those people while our passive income takes care of our bills, right? So that's the concept that we're chasing right now, time freedom.
That is beautiful. And there are endless needs to be met in the world. And when you can free yourself from that strain of needing to make money, then you can go beyond that. I think some people struggle with, what is enough? How will I know when I've reached that point? And it's different for everyone, you know, but we talk about that. It's your freedom point, and it's the point where you can work because you want to, not because you have to. So for you, when do you hope that you guys achieve this?
It's a tough question, especially since goalposts are always due to change, right? It's not just us, it's everyone. Like you think like, you know, one day 100,000 might be enough. You think the next day 200, 500, a million, 5 million, 10 million.
Yeah.
Like the goalpost will never stop. So what we would plan, me and my wife on our sit downs, would be enough would be when the passive sources are out earning our expense line, right? So we're always net positive on any given day, week, month, that we can choose to do our own thing, including part-time W-2 or part-time service to a patient population, while we're not getting poorer for fiat currency of that day. You know, that's probably our goal, and be able to provide a real asset for our kids to have as hand-me-downs, if they've earned it, right? Like, provided that they're good people and have enough for their education, and, you know, not having them take on enormous debts that, as is wont of this situation in this country, like student debts is such a real thing here, and that's something that we didn't grow up with.
So before we wrap up, you just mentioned sit downs and talking about money, and we have found that you guys are very good about that, and a lot of couples aren't. So what advice would you give to couples who don't talk about money and or maybe aren't on the same page with their dreams?
We've kind of made a spreadsheet of, you know, where's our assets, where's our liabilities, and where's our defense? Assets currently W-2 jobs for the both of us, and whatever investments we have. Then the liabilities are all the things like mortgage, car payments, this payment, that payment, all the bills, all the fixed liabilities, including like childcare costs or anything else.
Yeah.
And the variable costs, like, sometimes vacation, groceries, etc., that are variable. And then the defense stuff, so disability insurance, life insurance, malpractice insurance, this insurance, that insurance, including 529 plans for the kids for college fund, right? So those are broad categories. So we had to sit down on a more regular interval in the initial phase of things to kind of outline this categorized roadmap for ourselves. But once you have a steady understanding and mutual agreement on most of the things that you have, then probably it's whatever you're comfortable with. So we do like 2 weekly sit downs for at least an hour just to kind of take stock of where we are. And that's usually at that paycheck day. So whenever it's our paycheck day, that evening we sit and say like, okay, this much money came in, this much money went out during this past 2 weeks. So what are we doing with this? What are we doing with that? What further major expense items and minor expense items are we anticipating, and how do we plan for that? So I think having your spouse as a partner, 50% partner in a financial way of speaking, is the most important thing you can do as a financial asset.
That's really great. So to wrap up, you shared a lot. Thank you so much. You're very, like I said, very admirable that it does take intention every single day. Otherwise, life just happens to you. And then you find yourself in a place where you don't want to be, whether that is financially or in your career or in your marriage or, your kids, you don't have a good relationship with them. But like when you put the work in, you can really thrive in all areas. And you seem to be doing that, which is amazing. So if you could leave people with one, word of wisdom or piece of advice to start living more intentionally, what would you say?
Self-improvement is always the tendency that's needed. It's a process-oriented thing. It's not a result-oriented thing. If you look for results, you will get frustrated. If you want to lose like 10 kilos in the next 2 months, you'll be frustrated because you'll try to do shortcuts. You'll try to do fad diets. If you want to be a millionaire in a week, you'll be frustrated. So just the process has to be the appreciated part of things. Put processes in place and let the results happen on their own. I think that's the better way to go about things.
It's the journey, not the destination. But then you find yourself at the destination. You're very wise, Subrat. Thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that, Erin.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for being here. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We're going to have more, and we can't wait for you to meet all these amazing people who we get to work with. Thank you so much for joining us. Hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. We hope you'll join us next time. And until then, go be a Wealth Maverick.